Welcome to the Fabulous Lifestyle Radio Show, where we talk about food, fashion, finance, and foundations of life. We are live on KCAA Broadcasting Network, 10:50 a.m., following broadcasts in 102.3 FM and 106.5 FM. We are serving the world one household at a time. KCAA is affiliated with CNBC, NBC News, and NBC Sports. We are sponsored by Sheltered Studios, Fire Connect, and Kimiator Peak Performance Coaching.
Hi, this is Steve Matley. Welcome back to Fabulous Lifestyle Radio. We've been talking to Paul Matamoros from Metro Properties Holding Company, LLC. And right before the break, he was giving us a background, really painting a picture for us of why he chose New Mexico and why he chose Rio Rancho in particular. And you mentioned the mesas. And if you haven't been to New Mexico, the only way I can describe New Mexico, what nature did for New Mexico is it's like an entire palette of colors was spilled across the desert, and different times of day, the colors come out differently. It's really, truly is a land of enchantment. That's their slogan. But when you get there, you really feel that. So I could relate to that. I love visiting New Mexico and just enjoying the nature. But when we left off, you were taking us on a drive. You were driving and you were telling us where you were heading and what that did to impact your decision.
That's right, Steve. So as I was driving in here, like I mentioned, it brought me back to visiting Spain. But then as I was coming in and driving through their main streets, one of them in particular, Southern Boulevard, I was thrown back. I thought, wow, it seemed like time stopped in the 1970s and 80s. And not only in Rio Rancho, Southern Boulevard, but even Route 66 in Albuquerque. But my friends were moving to Rio Rancho, so that's where I was focusing on. So after we unloaded and got everything situated, I took a drive and I went back to Southern Boulevard and I thought, my goodness, here we are, 2010, the fourth quarter of 2010. Really, this looked like everything stopped in 1970, 1980 the most. And still lots were available on their main commercial boulevard. And I thought, oh my, where am I going to get an opportunity like this again? So I started to weigh out the pros and cons. I remember I went to the Intel building. They had a whiteboard there. I wrote down the pros and cons because they allowed me to do that. And I was on my way back home to the Bay Area, and I made it a must. I said, you know what? I'm going to take this big leap. I'm going to have some garage sales. I'm going to interview 3 brokers, even though I'm licensed in California. There's always some smarts to having someone represent you, especially if you're going to be leaving. And there was one broker that I really liked, and so he was going to handle the sales for me there. And I moved out there, and that's when I started to really see things. D.R. Horton, huge developer out here. It's not like San Francisco or California where you have these little pockets of fill-ins. Out here, like you mentioned, Steve, vast lands. And so D.R. Horton, Pulte, they were really taking advantage of this. I kept my hand on the real estate pulse. And I thought, as time went on, it was 2015, I said, I'm going to get out on my own again. So I opened up my business out there, and I started to look around, and I thought, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to join the NAIOP Association. NAIOPs, as you well know, they're all around the United States. It's the National Association of Industrial and Office Properties. And there you hear all the big people that are movers and shakers in a city. That's where you're going to hear the latest and the greatest. So the mayors are there, architects, investors, engineers, etc. And I noticed one thing in common in all these meetings. They were always looking at themselves as a poor state, and the children, the young minds, were leaving this place. So now I had another motivation. I said, here I am, a professional. Yes, I could sell a property, but what's my purpose to do this? And that's where this whole brainchild came, and of building or helping being part of the economic development to this Rio Rancho for the young minds of the University of New Mexico, the College of New Mexico, or any trade school here to keep the young minds here, because it was through the mouths of babes. They were mentioning this. DECA program students were mentioning this to both the mayors of both Rio Rancho and Albuquerque. What are you going to do for us to stay here? And so this has put me on a quest to put Rio Rancho on the map, because the secret is out. You could get a good deal on property out here. D.R. Horton is building like crazy, Pulte, but no one is really taking the reins on the commercial development side of things. And that's where I'm putting all my focus and concentration on. So much that the newspaper here got wind of it, called me and said, Paul, we want to write an article on what you're trying to do. So I appeared on the front page of the Rio Rancho Observer, and I was the first company businessman to have this vision to put the first urban building on Southern Boulevard. And so there was about 3 acres that I negotiated, and we were going through procurement, and then the pandemic hit, and you could just understand that. But what's nice about a building like that, you could put it anywhere. So I was ready to pack up and go back to San Francisco, because I'm an active San Francisco realtor there. And that's mainly where my money comes, San Francisco. But I thought, okay, let me just give it a couple of days. And I received a call from another broker and said, Paul, can we meet? I need to talk to you about something. So he introduced 38 acres to me, not too far where D.R. Horton is building 450 homes, where there's a school, a K through 5, that just had the ribbon cutting in August. And it's the only 38 commercial acres there. And we're proposing to put 5 to 7 commercial buildings that would house biotech administration buildings, that would have a curriculum for the school students, both K through 5, junior high, and the C&M campus. I did reach out to the educators, both in UNM, C&M, and it seems like they are in harmony. We were trying to get a nonprofit going. So everyone here knows that I am pro-growth, but yet why? It's because we need to keep or stop the influx of students leaving New Mexico. One might argue and say, well, Paul, this is a place to retire. It used to be, but you mark my words, in a few years from now, real estate is going to continue to go up. And it's not just going to be, the older people that are moving here. There are Californians that are, coming in, cash in hand, buying up property, and they're planning to have children. So what does that mean for us professionals? What are we going to do to keep the young here and be this like another Silicon Valley, if you will, because I do compare Rio Rancho to Silicon Valley.
And I remember San Jose before it was really Silicon Valley, and San Jose was nothing to speak of, really. It was just kind of this, it wasn't the nicest area of Northern California, really. It was just this old city, and everybody went there to see the Winchester House, and then they left, But now, of course, it's the center of the technology industry for the entire world. It's just a phenomenal place. So it definitely can transition. And your discussion of the brain drain, I always thought that of New Mexico. You have fantastic universities in both Albuquerque and Las Cruces. But once they graduate, there is absolutely no reason for them to stay there, because they don't. There's a few employers there. I won't say none, but
Right.
but there's nowhere near enough jobs to keep those highly educated young graduates there in the state of New Mexico working, either in Las Cruces or in Albuquerque, or the areas around it. And I think that's a great vision you have to create the type of community, and maybe that becomes a model community for other places in New Mexico to copy, because southern New Mexico has the same problems that northern New Mexico has when it comes to keeping those people. People think of it as a retirement community, artist communes, those type of things, and there really needs to be more thought given to how do we keep. Why do we educate these people if we don't have a place to put them once they come out? So my next question would be, explain your vision. You kind of already laid some of that out, but I'd like you to articulate what do you see Rio Rancho being? If you look at your vision, you close your eyes and you propel yourself 20 years ahead of time in your DeLorean time machine, what does Rio Rancho look like?
Fabulous question, Steve. Ever since I drove in here and walked these streets, to me, Rio Rancho has one thing that both Albuquerque, Santa Fe don't have, And that's the advantage of being a young city. What I mean by that is that Rio Rancho has not had a culture set in its personality yet. There are places, cities that would love the culture of Albuquerque, Santa Fe. But if we really think about it, and I'm glad that you mentioned San Jose, the Silicon Valley, Steve, you know it. Back in the 70s, even Menlo Park, I had an uncle and aunt, my cousins, we used to go visit them. What was that back in the 60s and 70s? Nothing like it is now. So what I think that Rio Rancho is going to be, their motto is Rio Rancho, the city of vision. Well, pro-growth here, I am behind biotech and autonomous commercial EVs. If you really think about it, it's the way of the future. We are going to be seeing some shifts in industries like we haven't seen before. This last COP20 reunion with all the big country leaders, the thing that makes this talk so different, Steve, is that now there are industries that are getting involved, car makers. If we look down here to the west, Mr. Bezos bought himself a huge spread out there. There's like 13 super Walmarts put together, a fulfillment center. There's an unused airport over there. I put the presentation together even before he was there, that's what I was looking at to see that was going to be the next Internet of Things district, the modern district, because there's a vast amount of land, thinking of even putting a loop there and a monorail, and hence the autonomous commercial EVs. That would be fantastic. So speaking of that, Southern California, we know that there was a big IPO that just opened last week, one of the biggest in history. And guess who owns about 22% of that? It is Mr. Bezos, from what I read. So why I'm thinking that Rio Rancho is sitting beautiful. It's only 40 years old as far as the city itself, and it's modern. Intel is here, HP is here, but what I'm wanting to focus on is the modern education and training for the young minds, that they don't have to think about, let's get a big company over here, when they can be the company. That's how Silicon Valley made its great, say, mark on the world.
Garages. Really started out of the garages. That's right.
That's it. So that's what I'm trying to do, Steve, it's going to be a paradigm shift here for the young and the people, that they could do it. They just have to start thinking that they are sitting in a beautiful situation right now. And I'm doing all I can to keep this moving.
Fantastic. So your vision you cast sounds a lot like Disney's original vision of Epcot sort of idea. I want to get into more details on that. We've got to go to a break. We're talking to Paul Matamoros of Metro Properties Holding Company, LLC, and we're discussing the vision for Rio Rancho, New Mexico. We'll be right back right after this.
We are live on KCAA Broadcasting Network, 1050 AM, following broadcasts in 102.3 FM and 106.5 FM. We are serving over 5 million households in the Inland Empire, North County, San Diego, Orange County, and San Gabriel Valley. We are serving the world one household at a time. We are also in iHeart, Spotify, Tiki Live, Ustream, Apple, iTunes, and anywhere with your favorite podcast. KCAA is affiliated with CNBC, NBC News, and NBC Sports. We are sponsored by Sheltered Studios, Fire Up Connect, and Kim Yater Peak Performance Coaching.